Next agenda item number 3, where we have items that are listed. If we all agree, Ms. Maseti, Advocate Sitol, may we then go to the next item number 4, declaration of interest. If there are forms that are agenda, if we could complete those forms, but if you colleagues to complete the forms and send them to Faye. And with item number 5 is the report from the chairperson of the Piped Gas Subcommittee, Ms. Maseti, that take us through item number 5.1.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Chairperson, we have a tariff application by ROMCO, the Republic of Mozambique pipeline company, a transmission regulator to approve its tariffs. And the tariffs is based on, as you know, that ROMCO has at least 3 tariffs for each investment that it makes. So the first tariff is the gas transmission, one for the cross-border pipeline from Temane up until Secunda. So today's discussion. The second tariff, Chairperson, is for the located in South Africa in Komati Port. The pipeline, which we call that, you've got some excess capacity there, Chairperson. So, Chairperson, the team has a application that is brought by ROMCO, and in short, the subcommittee has recommended that the tariff as it stands because of certain matters that are not in compliance with the methodology itself and the way that the calculation of the tariffs. One such calculation is the tax itself did not follow the method that is proposed in our tariff guidelines, such that inflated the revenue required as well as the tariff itself, Chairperson. The second thing that maybe members would like to understand as the reason is the sort of the weighted average. The 2 tariffs that I said are not the subject of today's discussion, were unfortunately pulled into the targeted revenue, and therefore then it requires NERSA to consider a weighted average tariff. In short, a weighted average tariffs. Thirdly, Chair, which is the last point, just as a highlight, ROMCO, for the first time, it is requesting that, or to at least to SASOL in this case, that assist with the operation of its pipeline. It requests that there be a different tariff, that they be charged a different tariff. That different tariff is based on distance, that it needs to be justified and provide information justifying for the straight to the recommendations as I take the on page 11, Chairperson, where we request the Energy Regulator to not approve ROMCO's multi-year transmission tariff application, for Energy Regulator to approve the reasons for decision for this non-approval, and the reasons for decisions are attached to this submission. Thank you, Chair.
And Ms. Maseti has made the recommendations. Any questions, comments, or areas that we would like
of the committee, Ms. Maseti? Chair, just it's an issue of clarity. When I saw the submission, the tariff is from January 2020. They did not just implement a certain post the period of application, the starting date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
Team. Just 2 or 3 issues from my side, Chair. On the covering submission, paragraph 5.10, actually table 2, which is under paragraph. Just wanted to check what is the source of in the RFD. They are not highlighted, but the issue that I'm raising is that because these are historic figures, they are supposed to be figures, but they appear to be different from what is published by. Instance, if you look at the average rate of inflation for 2022, according to Stats SA, but we have a different figure used by the applicant. And my issue, Chair, is that we don't question this in our analysis, yet it is a key input into how the applicant has determined the baseline tariff for 2023, which is then escalated from there up to for the following years that they're applying for. What is the source, and why aren't we questioning those figures as well, if they are a key input into the baseline tariff that we've identified in considering the application. And in the RFD, we have dealt with these issues. For instance, the issue of the additional volumes, the taxation calculations, the net working capital. But what I didn't see is where we then discuss and analyze the fair allocation of risk between investors and customers. It's about the equitable allocation of risk between South African and Mozambican customers, but not necessarily the risk sharing between investors and customers under paragraph 6.4. Maybe if I can get some clarity. And then lastly, so for me, where the applicant, the tariff guidelines or our methodology, I think you should just make it, and I'm not sure what the approach is, or what the much custom networking capital. I think that's from page 26 of 40. We then conclude by saying that we will have a meeting, or we'll sit down with the applicant, use the tariff guidelines from the tariff guidelines in calculating the net working capital. This is on the basis that they've deviated from, keep on saying, well, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss this with the.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mrs. Beer, is your hand the same one as the first one, or you have a follow-up question?
She's old hand, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Maseti?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I will also be assisted by the team in the responses, but let me first December 2022. However, at that stage, it was still very early on with the application itself, and we needed to publish it for comment when people are not in the office for the better part of December, and also going into January, we are not found to not have, with regards to what then happens if there is no tariff by January 2023. The decision taken by the Energy Regulator to deal with such circumstances is that the regulator remains effective until it has previously approved. The regulator or regulator with regards to that by giving the grace period. Chairperson just asked the team, because they've done the technical assessment with regards to the inflation figures and the other things that Mr. Sibanda spoke about. Then I can just come in on one or two things with regards to the gas volume. Smagoda.
I think purely on the inflation portion, the applicant used historical figures. So the figures that were looking, so given the nature of the actual the methodology that the applicant is using, then they have kept those constant hours as so as.
No. Chairperson, may I come in?
Yes, Ms. Maseti?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Dumisani, please indicate, because these are historical figures, what they do even when injected inflation. So you must indicate whether these are actual inflation figures, number one. Number two, whether we used BR or, Stats SA or any other source for those figures. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. I think maybe to start off, the nature of the DCF itself, it's for the period. When we're working out then the clawbacks, we then update, per year the historic key is actually the BER, which is the forecasted application itself.
Mr. Njezla, Mr. Sbanda asked a specific question, and what Mr. Sbanda wanted to know, what is the source? So can you be responding to this? What is the source of that, and why is it different from that? Because if we are looking...
BER, it was the BER.
Okay.
Yes, Chair.
Mr. Sbanda? Mr. Sbanda, may I check with you? Are you
Chair, but I will accept, especially if in the clawback we then used figures. But I thought that because these are historical, so they would use, actual figures. But I do take the point that because of the methodology that is, projections by BER, so they tend to keep that constant. So I'll accept, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. So you would be fine that Mr. Njezla does not have to address the part that why it is not questioned in the analysis. Mr. Sband?
Chairperson, I would accept that as indicated, as long as we do attend to it when we do the clawback. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. With regards to the risk allocation, we actually, as when we assessed the country, the allocation of risk there that we did was purely from the geographic, given the pipelines where it is situated. However, with regards to there are other applications, because we believe that the risk allocation from a volumes perspective was not, the new volumes were not taken into consideration. However, when it comes to working capital, we believe that is a more of a fundamental or a flaw from the applicant themselves, as the actual basis on their deviation were purely not they actually didn't understand, or they didn't use the methodology accepted what they were they're applying for. So that was totally not allowed, as also with the tax itself as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Maseti, I note your hand. I just want to check with Mr. Sbanda if are you covered, Mr. Sband? For 6.4?
Chair, I'm not necessarily covered on the question of the...
You assist?
Chair, if I can come in on the allocation, the analysis that the volumes or additional volumes that we're bringing into the pipeline were not added or used in the calculations such that it will keep calculated tax, Chair. They used or when a value of almost 50% at the end of the year, such that it will keep the tax artificially high and is not aligned to the period of depreciation. So in all, they are calculating on the side of keeping the tariff high. So it was a conclusion to say this calculation does not really address the risks, particularly from a customer's perspective, that would want to see all issues that contribute to efficiencies put into the tariff calculation through the volume and through the tax calculation. So expand a bit on that point, Chair, after this meeting. But those are the points we wanted to make or to bring out, to say it is additional volumes were not used in the calculations and tax was kept artificially high, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kotora. Mr. Sbanda, I think your input was that what has been given, Mr. Sbanda, although it's in different sections, are you fine that if we expand and talk a little bit more about that risk sharing between the investors and customers and align it with the part that Mr. Kotora has mentioned, that it is in the way that they've calculated things that the risk is put more on the customer than on the investors? Would you be fine with that? I will still come to you, Ms. Maseti.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm partly covered in the way that you've couched it, but I wanted to come in right on the issue of the risk allocation as the regulator. And therefore, we said we will not approve the profile so that for the ramping up on the pipeline. Now, it has done that before, not with this pipeline. So we always ask them, show us the ramping up and the time horizon when you realize the excess capacity. Because you can't just say the team in the calculation to add, for instance, volume large customers more. The team has done that, but maybe they just need to be much more prominent that approach the team has taken, it is meant specifically with risk allocation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Maseti. Sibanda raised really is an enhancement that in our guidelines, can we be more emphatic and specific about what is it that must be included by the applicant and what is it that is allowed and what is it that's not allowed?
Input, and indeed, instead of saying we'll sit down, it approach that is in the guidelines, and there is no justification provided to digress from the position that is stipulated in the tariff guidelines. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. I do not see any hands, and I take that as that we are happy to proceed, discussed, and the suggestions that have been made. One is that the regulator must not approve the ROMCO's multi-year transmission tariff application for 7 points for the period 1 January 2023 to 31 December 2025, and then of the reasons for the decision attached here as Annexure A. May I, by proposal and decision? Ms. Simane, Ms. Maseti, Mr. Sibanda, Ms. Sibiya, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkhize, Ms. Pungose. We will then move to the next item, item 5.2. The Transnet Pipeline multi-year.
One is the multi-year tariff by Transnet Gas from Secunda. This tariff is from April 2023 until March 2026. Here. And it must approve therefore the reasons for decision for that. And it also indicates that Transnet must then amend its application along the lines of the assessment or being guided by the assessed by the Energy Regulator to ensure compliance and to ensure that only costs that are efficiently and prudently incurred that will be allowed into the tariffs. So those items, Chairperson, as you will read them out yourself, they are on paragraph 2 of the covering submission. But mainly, Chairperson, if you look at paragraph 4.3, you will see that there are those the tariff applications, tariff that Sasol Transnet has applied for the period 2023-24, 24-25, and 25 cost. In this application, mainly, if I were to give an example of such escalation, it will be on the decommissioning provision. And on that alone, just one component of the operational, you will see that they have increased significantly by over 1,000%. And the impact of that you will see in the revenue as well as also in the final tariffs. We have also just to see the impact of just one cost component, where we have shown it on page 6 of the covering submission. The table there, table 5, shows the difference. And the Chairperson, you can see 31% for the first year of the period. And then for the second year is 29%, and mainly because of one cost item. And such cost item, Chairperson, is not justified even on the basis of maybe shortfall in the previous years, later that it is insufficient or that there is a shortfall. That, Chairperson, I would like then to request that the Energy Regulator considers the recommendations as the decision on this matter. Thank you, Chair.
By the Pipe Gas Subcommittee, may I, by show of hands, see those who would want to clarify anything, enhance the document, or question what is on the document?
Chair, I'm happy with the recommendation. and perhaps some of these comments really are probably just for future purposes and approaches in terms of how we. That's on page 23 of 35 for some of these. But for me, so there are things like your materials and supplies and telephone and data and miscellaneous and all of those, where we sort of like claim that these on table 8 was to apply. So for me, there's a difference in costs by inflation, and for some of those salaries and wages, surely there should be a insurance, electricity. We should know. So for those, I think saying we've applied inflation and therefore, that's the total of the a prudency as we claim in 5.32, then it should be. I know there's probably some work that was done to come up with the figure, but for me that they should as a service provider that did a previous evaluation, and then you change a service provider and the new valuation comes at more than 1,000, and should it be that perhaps there was previous miscalculations or whatever it is to consumers, at least the licensee must show in terms of the reasons provided by 3 years of those. And for me, clawbacks should be done annually following the receipt of audited figures, and waiting for 3 years to do a consolidated clawback volatility in tariffs. I'm not sure why we take this approach. I'm just raising it, Chair. And then again, if you look at table 13, we have a time value of money, and I've always understood that in terms of the piped gas methodology, we don't do time value of money. Maybe I can be clarified there in case I misunderstood the issue there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Band. I can the colleagues, so I'm going to request Ms. Massetti to assist with in the on 5.32. I think this is guided. Ms. Massetti.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't indication given by the applicant, and therefore NERSA decided for protection of the payers of the tariff to only adjust using inflation, because that has not really been done in a focused manner. So yes, Chairperson, it will be a change from prudence adjustment that has to be done considering inflation. That work needs to be subjected to a thorough prudency evaluation. So yes, that will be done. The clawback, my understanding, Mr. Sbanda, is similar to yours, and the clawback has to be done in the in the following year, not to do also specify that as also not accommodated in the tariff guidelines. Maybe, Chairperson, through you, if they can just clarify just the clawback aspect, the clawback. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. So
yes, Chairperson, Mr. Kotora or Dumisani. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think on the club lines, we never used to allow the time value of money, but when we did the harmonization with the petroleum division in the 2017 tariff guidelines, we include, as per the harmonization project we did with the rest of the divisions, Chair. We were not calculating clawback for a multi-year tariff. It was deemed to say, once you have made a decision on the tariffs, let's say we have made a decision on 7 Rand, and we find that maybe the tariff is supposed to be 6 Rand 80 or 7 Rand 10 cents. It's like we are now midway through a decision. I think something about functor.
Chairperson, you are muted.
Ms. Masetti, please go ahead. I was saying, and apologies for that, our sidelines say we must do this. And when we don't do that, why would we expect the applicants to do anything that we say in the methodology as well? So, and I think that was the spirit.
In the following year, once we obtain the audited financials, do with changing the decision of the energy regulator, because these were forward-looking applications that have some of the cost. So once you implement it, if you've got the actuals, you must do the variance under recovered. Now you wait for 3 years and it has a severe revenue shock. What would we do after 3 years? Also, not just for the business, but also for the consumers, those that are paying the service. Now the clawback is so huge, it means that they must now pay all of those shortfalls for the past 3 years in one tariff. That can be. So it has nothing to do with the changing of the decision. I think they must also advise the methodologies.
Ms. Masetti, so Mr. Kotora, I hope you are clear with this, and I think what I would think that is going to change any part of the decision that is proposed in 15.12 or 15. Ms. Masetti?
No, Chairperson, it won't change. If you look at the table 13, and then you look at the edit, just
check. Think you provided your guidance.
No, Chairperson, I'm happy with the responses. Thanks.
Thank you. Then, colleagues, may I take you to item number 15 point? I don't see any other hands for questions. 15 submission, where I'm recommending to the regulator that the regulator approves that the 2026 is not approved, and then approves from 5.12 that Transnet amends its application for the tariff and look at the conditions is contained in the reasons for decision attached. 15.13, the transmission tariff application within 30 days of receiving the NESA decision, and the decision that if NESA does not receive the aforementioned amended application from Transnet within the above timelines, NESA tariffs in line with reasonable and efficient costs, which the regulator will determine within the parameters of the RFD. And I think on 15.15, we just delete the approve, that we also approve the publication of the reasons for the decision. Ms. Noor, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to check on the issue of, is that supposed to form part of the resolution today?
The clawback, that it is not supposed to be over 3 years. I think what Mr. Swand had provided guidance, and what in the do you want us to record that as well?
No, sir, not necessarily. I was just looking for guidance.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Mkiza, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Chairperson, thanks for the opportunity. I'm a member of the 30 days to maybe consider increasing it to 60 days, considering amongst other things that could take longer than say 20 days to finalize, which will then, but just to be accommodating and being reasonable. But why waste resources in terms longer? If it is shorter, well and good, because the team already has agreed to engage, committed to engage with Transnet in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. I beg your pardon? The proposal, colleagues, is that we in 15.1.3, we say that the Transnet application to be required to be submitted. We require Transnet to submit an amended 60 days instead of 30 days. Anyone opposed to that? Ms. Masetti, would you be fine with that?
Revised application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So what we are going to change for in this part of the decision, members, are you aligned with the 30 to 60? I didn't ask if there's anyone who is objecting to that proposal. I see members are fine. So We are changing FAI 15.1.3. That is that Transnet be required to submit an amended transmission tariff application within 60 days of receiving the necessary. Thank you. Mr. Maseti, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Bia, Mr. Spanda, Ms. Mbungose, Mr. Mkize, and Advocate Sitole. Thank you. We have Mr. Mkize, I know you had said that you'd leave us at 3 o'clock. If you're still here, we welcome your staying longer if you are not going to be leaving. But if you are, then yes, you are excused, Mr. Mkize.
It's more than I live.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
It's more than I live.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Ms. Maseti, may you take us to item 5.3?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I will take the matter as read. Is one of the new entrants into the market, the applications. The one that I'm on, Chairperson, is the application by Eliza Gas Pty Ltd. They are applying for a multi-year tariff for the transmission pipelines. The period is March 2022, February 2032. Remember, these are a new entrants. I'm just emphasizing that in line with the time period I've just indicated. Chairperson, without dwelling much on this, tariffs up until 2031. The tariffs are indicated there, Chairperson, and they've used the method of calculating these tariffs, Chairperson, which we actually found that from the calculations and verification that they are in order in terms of ensuring that this entity will be able to operate and have sufficient cash flow to operate these transmission pipelines. With that, Chairperson, I would then request the Energy Regulator to also to approve the publication of the reasons for decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Maseti. Any questions, comments? I don't see any hands. Energy Regulator approves the Eliza Gas multi-year inclusive of VAT, that the discounts are allowed and must be applied in accordance with the Non-Disc Act, and that the approved tariffs will remain in force until the date that the Energy Regulator approves another tariff. By show of hands, colleagues. But Ms. Maseti, Ms. Mane, Ms. Bungose, Mrs. Spandole, and Mr. Gumede. Faye, we have the decision. Then, colleagues, may we then move.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, this next application was brought by Phambili Gas for its transmission pipeline. The regulator to approve a tariff for this pipeline for the period January 2022 until December 20. The Pipe Gas Subcommittee then has evaluated the tariff that has been applied for, approved the tariff that is shown on page 3, and it shows all of the tariffs that they are indicating will be charged for each of the years within the period, and that this tariff that they have come up with was calculated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Maseti. Members, there's a recommendation by the Pipe Gas Subcommittee for us to approve these tariffs. Any questions, concerns? By show of hands, members? None? May I then take you to the decision which the Piped Gas Subcommittee recommends that the Energy Regulator approves the Phambili Gas Pty Ltd multi-year tariff transmission, that the Energy Regulator approves that the tariffs are maximum tariffs exclusive of VAT, that the discounts are allowed and must be applied in accordance with the non-discrimination provisions of Section 22 of the Gas Act of 2001. Approved tariffs remain in force until the date on which the Energy Regulator approves another tariff. By show of hands, colleagues. Mkize, thank you. We now have the decision as requested. Colleagues, if there's nothing else, can we then move to item number 6, on 6.1, official notices and personalia?
Chairperson, maybe to close the meeting for the members of the public. Thank you.
Okay. That part, okay. Let me do the workings of the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. The meeting will now be closed. We will only. Thank you, Ms. Maseti.